The featured speaker for GFCA's June 8, 2019 breakfast meeting was Mr. Rick Beach. Rick is the long-serving safety chair of the Cirrus Owners and Pilots Association and is also GFCA's secretary-treasurer. He's a frequent speaker at our meetings, but this morning he'll be speaking about the radio skills required to fly the San Francisco Bay Tour. We hope you'll enjoy the presentation.
I ended up buying an airplane, and it was a Cirrus SR-22, the one with the parachute. And unfortunately, in those early days, pilots found old ways to kill new airplanes and themselves. So I got involved in trying to both get the message out. Boris Popov, who invented the ballistic recovery systems, parachute systems, had a saying, "Don't die with a perfectly good parachute behind you." So I started campaigning and advocating for safety stuff, ended up running the Cirrus Owners and Pilots Association recurrent training program for about 9 years, and then recently have kind of shifted more local and been working with GFCA and with Pat Scanlon here at Scanlon Aviation. And Pat had this simulator sitting upstairs, not being used very much. COPA ships 6 of these simulators around the world to each of its recurrent training events, both in Europe and in the United States. And so I wanted to campaign for using the simulator to help practice as well as train pilots in doing things safely in the airplane. So this talk came about because of 2 reasons. One, that motivation to share. There's a tool. It would be kind of a loss if you stumbled without some practice. The tool's there for you to use. And secondly, I was hearing the pilots in the North Bay, we don't usually go into that busy airspace down there. And it's like, except you missed the Bay Tour. It's an amazing gift from ATC that allows you to go over landmarks and see things from the air that you would have a very different view if you just drove. Well, everybody does drive by them. When you're in the air, you get a very different view of it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about ATC communications, a bit of a tutorial quickly, because I'm assuming most people have their private pilot's license and know what they're doing. I'm going to talk about the simulator and what it is. I'm going to talk about the way to prepare for the Bay Tour, and then plan, talk, fly, debrief for trips like the Bay Tour that you would be, and I'm encouraging you to do. And then I'm going to simulate it on the simulator. Unfortunately, Microsoft conspired to give me a slightly different view this morning than it did last night. Well, thanks, Microsoft. So just to jump into it, this program is available for Wings credit. And where's Glenn? Glenn, my buddy Glenn over there, is from the Oakland FSDO. And he helped announce it and invite a number of you people to register online. I told him, let's cut the capacity so that the usual suspects that come here every day would have access to breakfast and the like. And so he's been wonderful to work with, and Ken and the board are optimistic we will do more of these safety breakfasts for Wings credit. Specifically, the sheets, initial it if you've already signed up, fill in your email address if you didn't sign up and you want Wings credit. One little gotcha, if you know something about the Wings program, you get enough credits, both knowledge and flight, you don't have to do a 24-month flight review. That's the big payoff. One of the requirements is that you have to have an aeronautical decision-making credit. And I was talking to Glenn, since we've got so many people here, we're going to change the credit from being an elective to being an aeronautical decision-making credit, which is a prerequisite for getting wing status. So, ATC communications. One of the things that would help is for you to be aware of and familiar with the way ATC talks. And this PDF document is 120 pages. If you've got ForeFlight, it's in the documents catalog. So you can download it, read it at your leisure. But it's got all of the various phrases that ATC uses. It doesn't have the instructions. But if you hear a word, if you hear a phrase, it explains how ATC will use that over the radio to you. And ATC will expect you to be doing that. And if you do, they tend to treat you more like a real pilot. How many times in the LA basin have I gotten up? I used to be based in San Diego, and I would fly north here. And I would hear on Saturday, Sunday mornings, this typically a Cessna, and they very imprecise, very hesitant. And I frequently heard fly heading 270 and essentially stay away. So if you use the pilot controller glossary and you understand these things, it's more likely you'll be treated seriously. 3 key phrases: unable, when you can't do something. Left 360s will come up in this bay tour, you'll see. Unfamiliar, when you need to ask for help. And they can be very accommodating. That's their job. It's a lot of paperwork if you crash and die. So their desire is to help you be successful. And then stand by. They say it to you, you can say it to them. When you are unfamiliar, unclear about something, please don't read back something you don't understand. Say stand by, figure it out, ask them to spell the waypoint if that's what they're doing. Ask for a vector, do something other than agree to something you don't understand. Helpful tips: observe the normal pace of pilots on the frequency versus the rapid pace of the controllers. They say the same things over thousands of times. Do you know how long it takes a controller to be certified for a sector? Over a year. Do you know how many times they've said things on the radio? Over a year. They go pretty fast because they know what they're going to say, and they always say it. And the pilots, even airline pilots, people like me, you'll hear me on the radio, just talk normally. Don't get sucked into doing things faster than you're comfortable. Rehearse, or think through at least, what you're going to say. Typically when you call up, that's the first break in the communications, and you need to announce what you're doing, how you're doing it. Just think through what that is. Request clarification of uncertain, and please, believe that ATC wants you to have a good and safe flight. And the Bay Tour, both here and in Los Angeles, San Diego, they actually, when I've talked to controllers, admit that it's more fun than American clear to land. So you represent a little bit of excitement and enthusiasm for flying, and they like that. Believe it. I mean, you hear stories, but that happens only with the people that don't use phraseology and don't follow instructions, and you're not those people, right? You won't be after this. So behind me is a simulator that is in Scanlon Aviation Training Department, and it is manufactured by FlyThisSim, and it's got 3, well, you see up here, it's got 3 visual displays, a touch panel for the avionics, and a control station for the instructor or for various things you want to do to control the simulation. So normally, this is what the simulator would look like if Windows hadn't gotten in the way. And you can see it's got a visual view of where we're going. Here's the Diamond. This is San Carlos Airport. This is the Diamond Waterway, and we're just about to cross Highway 101. So there's a lot of visual reference for VFR flight. Of course, if you're doing IFR, this is what you would tend to see. So we can simulate the weather to satisfy your currency at doing weather-obscured approaches. And importantly, this panel here can be reconfigured with a whole variety of avionics. Scanlon Aviation purchased the Cessna suite and the Cirrus suite. There are others available. Oh yeah. So there are others available, and for instance, if the Bonanza pilots in the area were interested in doing it, we could acquire that.
The cost is?
I don't know. Touch panel for avionics knobs. So the way the simulator accommodates all those various panels is that it uses the touch panel here to be able to press the buttons that are, or twist the knobs that are part of the avionics. You don't need a piece of hardware from Garmin or from Avidyne or whomever, King, to be part of the simulator. You can do it in software with a touch panel. It's not perfect, but as I say here, it's got reasonable flight dynamics. I've flown the Cessna and talked to people who fly Cessnas, certainly with the Cirrus, because the owners of FlyThisSim, the developers, owned and flew Cirrus. The flight dynamics for the Cirrus are really quite good. And then the other stuff, I just don't know. So the the minimal controls are essentially the joystick for navigating the yoke. In the Cirrus, it's a side yoke, but here it's a joystick. And for other airplanes, there's a real yoke, and you just plug it in, and the simulator reconfigures itself. Then this is, whoops, back, sorry, pushed the wrong button. Then it has throttle knobs for the Cessna configuration and a quadrant for the Cirrus configuration. So you get a little bit of feel. And again, this is not to teach you to land and take off. This is really more about a procedure trainer so that your mind is being trained more so than your arms and legs. What's cool about the simulator is that you can pre-program locations to start the simulation. So one of the things that's now possible is you can use the simulator to get instrument currency. And so with the help of a safety pilot, a year ago, I would hop in my airplane and I would fly like 6 approaches in 2.5 hours. And I would go to Napa and Concord and Rio Vista, what is that place? Rio Vista, and Santa Rosa and all these places. But it would take time to get there. So with a simulator, you can say, no, let's just go to Napa, runway 36 inbound from Concord. And you press the button, you wait for the system to refresh, put the scenery up there, obscure the weather because you're, of course, doing it IFR, and you're there. So easy to do a bunch of situations for approaches. But you can really get fancy and say, no, I want to go to Van Nuys. And instead of taking 2 hours, just motoring along, you can reposition the simulator, set it up for the ILS with low minimums, low ceilings, and fly the ILS into Van Nuys, Burbank, San Diego airports. And so we've had one client who wanted to practice faraway airports to see what it's like before he flew there. And he was talking about Idaho. Flying with an iPad. My iPad is being used as a camera right now, but ForeFlight Garmin Pilot will accept the AHRS data, the heading, attitude, position, latitude, longitude, speed, air, all that stuff into ForeFlight, getting it over the network from the simulator. So you can actually record the way ForeFlight records your flights that you perform on the simulator, which is really kind of cool. And so you can get a Google Earth thing out, and that helps with some of the debriefing afterwards. Even though you sat in the chair upstairs and didn't move, ForeFlight has it tracking where the plane was going. And you can feed it into the ForeFlight logbook, and then you can log it as the sim, and you can get yourself instrument current. Oh, and that's because FlyThisSim has gotten approval from the FAA as a basic aviation training device. And so the FAA is really concerned about the fidelity of the controls and the flight dynamics. And they went through the process at FlyThisSim to talk to the FAA and make sure they were okay. And they actually have a letter. So if you're doing training, you need a copy of this letter. Copies are available in the folder right next to the sim. You need a copy of this in order to be validating to your DPE examiner that you actually had an approved device for the hours you claim that you did training with the simulator. Well, it turns out one of the things back here, there we go, is this instrument experience. In July and September of last year, the FAA changed the rules so that you can use a basic or advanced aviation training device for instrument currency. Now, you got to simulate the weather, and you got to log it, and you got to have a copy of the if you were ramp checked, a copy of the approval letter. You don't need a CFI. Now, if you're doing training and you want it to be in your logbook as hours towards either a private license or an instrument rating, you will need the endorsement of a CFI that that training was dual instruction given. So beware, if you're familiar with the sim and you want currency, that's one way to get it. And since I haven't been flying that much in the last year, I've done this a couple of times, partly because it's fun, and partly because it's not 2.5 hours of droning around in the sky between airports. All righty. San Francisco Bay Tour, the reason you are all here. Can I hold questions to the end? Write it down. San Francisco Bay Tour. Anything you do needs some planning, a pre-flight plan. And for a Bay Tour, I included a step ahead of that to prepare. And then plan the specific, prepare, get ready for it, plan the flight, and then talk on the radio, which is the whole point about radio skills for the Bay Tour, fly it, which often is influenced by what you hear back from the air traffic controllers, because they're going to give you instructions, and then have a good time, fly, and then debrief. One little overriding thing, this is a sightseeing flight. So be aware that you're taking people typically in the right seats of your airplane. Therefore, you want to fly which way is this? Clockwise, so that the people on the passenger side get the best views. If you want to do it for yourself, you can fly counterclockwise and then the best views are on the left. You with me? You just want, it's a sightseeing flight. Now maybe you go with an instructor or a safety pilot just so that you get some help when you get into the challenging situations I'm going to play for you. But it's about having a good time. And ATC are very accommodating. You'll see why and how in a moment. So prepare. Get some charts. Make a list of all the frequencies you're going to talk to. Write out some scripts so that you have some idea of what you need to say. And then plan where you want to go, which may be a factor by who you're flying with. And so I'm going to choose a specific example of it. Plan. You got to fly your airplane. Make sure it's airworthy. Make sure it's got the headset connections. Make sure the windows are clean. Do whatever you have to do to make the airplane suitable for a sightseeing. Fuel. How much fuel are you going to be? Passengers. Passenger briefings. Are they nervous Nellies? Are they pilots that want to, sort of be impressed by your skills? Just figure out what the dynamic is going to be with your passengers. Emergencies. In the Bay Tour, there's a lot of water. And so you may choose to do a Bay Tour that minimizes the amount of water you fly over. Or, screw that, I have a raft in my airplane, I have life vests, and so we're just going to go and, emergencies don't happen that often. But when it does happen, what are you going to do? Talk. I mentioned the radio phraseology. Figure out what's that. Instructions. What are they going to tell you to do? And sometimes it gets pretty interesting. Readbacks. Be really thoughtful about how you read back the instructions. Sometimes it's Roger. They've told you something, all you need to do is remember it. Sometimes they tell you to do something, Wilco, I will comply. And sometimes they want you to read back the heading and the altitude and all the bits and pieces, and so be prepared for the kinds of readbacks you might get. Fly. Workload reduction, especially if you've got people in the cockpit asking questions or saying, ooh, ooh, or trying to get their cameras to work, whatever. I highly recommend you know how to use your autopilot. Workload reduction equals use of the autopilot. And the sim, I'm definitely going to do that. And then you don't have to fly fast for the Bay Tour. It's not a race, and there's lots of things to see. And there are opportunities for you to do a 360 and see it again. Just make sure you have some space and time to do that. And then with any of my flights, you kind of grade yourself. How well did you do? I've yet to fly a perfect flight. Sorry, I'm not that good. But when I debrief, and you'll hear, sorry, but you'll hear it in the recorded audio that I got. And it's like, I I really was thinking, think through what went wrong. Think through what went well. And what would you do to deal with some of the surprises that you get? And then plan for next time. Next time I'm going to, and then write down a few notes about how you'll make it better the next time. Cool. Prepare. Live ATC is an internet service in which people put computers with radio receivers and stream the data, the radio data, out on the internet. And so you can take Live ATC website, type in where the location is you're interested in. It could be Gnoss Field, it could be my list in a moment. Oh, it could be the list, Oakland Center, NorCal, Oakland, Tower and Ground, San Carlos Tower, San Francisco Tower. And you can just listen. Now, maybe at work, this is not so good, but if you have a computer and a headset, who's gonna know what you're listening to? And it's just trying to get some of the cadence, some of the phraseology, perhaps some of the instructions. I was listening to NorCal. It says up here, it's actually in stereo. So the computer that records it listens to the northbound transmissions on one channel and the southbound transitions on the other channel, and they're talking to both at the same time. I had never heard that kind of stereo separation. My audio panel doesn't do that, but what a cool feature. And you can listen to two of them in a 10-to-1. It was kind of cool. Actually, I was listening to Oakland Tower when I was about to fly my rehearsal, and they called out, oh, sorry, there's a TFR over Oakland Coliseum, which is a waypoint required for the Oakland transition. So they sent this person, no, you get to go to Hayward. And they denied the Oakland Airport transition. I guess I'm not flying that day because I really wanted to fly the Oakland transition, so I flew it another day. So TFRs are a little bit of excitement. Prepare the maps and charts. This is the San Francisco VFR chart. It's not enough detail to really help you figure out where all the things are and how you should plan. So it's good that you have the sectional, it's on ForeFlight. Better is that you have the terminal area chart. Unfortunately, ForeFlight zooms in so that if you go to the San Francisco area and zoom in a little bit, it will substitute the terminal area chart over the area which is charted seamlessly with the VFR chart nearby. It's a higher resolution, and this is our area, Gnoss Field. Oh, by the way, Michael Knight got his parachute symbol. So we're now a parachute airport. But on the back of the terminal area chart is the flyway chart, which is not for navigation, but it's a guide for what ATC will expect you to do. Some of it is just VFR flights in busy airspace. Some of it says you are required to have ATC clearance to go through here because you end up going through Class Charlie Oakland space. So it's a place you can go and dive into the minutia about charts and figure out all the places where it's giving you advice of ways to go. Now, and it's the back of the paper chart. If you're in ForeFlight, it's in the documents catalog, and you can upload it to your iPad as a separate document, not as a chart, but as a separate document for planning. And I actually don't know if it's georeferenced, so I'm not sure whether you could see it there or not. You know what I'm talking about with the chart? You don't think it is? Anyway, the main charts are georeferenced for ForeFlight, and it'll show you where your plane is or where your GPS spot is. So, and Ken made a comment, there's been some controversy about the new SFO airspace. And I've highlighted in yellow here an area of problems, a gotcha. So the area in yellow, you can fly from the surface up to 4,000 feet. And we're hearing reports of people that are getting conflicting traffic from airliners that are landing at Oakland, that are going through that airspace, which we're supposed to be able to fly there without getting ATC control. And so I've marked here, these are the arrival paths that are charted. But notice, the arrival path, the plane, it stops right there, or it actually continues under ATC control and they don't chart what happens inside the boundaries of Class Bravo airspace. So the problem is you fly along in the Niles Canyon area at under 4,000 feet, and you've got these airliners going into runway 30 at Oakland. And if you're talking to ATC, I highly recommend flight following. They will give you an alert for traffic. So this is an interesting gotcha that seems like it's subject to some difficulty for pilots flying in that area. I mentioned that Maryland has copies of Max Trescott's Bay Tour. He's a friend of ours, and he put together this chart. It's annotated with sites, and it's annotated with paths, and on the backside, it's got local tribal knowledge about each of the airports, Palo Alto, San Carlos, Oakland, whatever. And so he sent me a set of those. We're selling them at cost at 15 bucks, and Maryland has them. So this is just a useful guide if you're going to do it all on your own. So, planning a simulated Bay tour. The plan originates at Gnoss Field and goes south and over Oakland, San Carlos, past San Francisco, and the destination is Gnoss Field. Now, I keep saying destination because it'll turn out in air traffic control, when they do a strip, they'd like to know where you're going to stop. And if you say Oakland, San Carlos, then they're likely to ask, are you landing? And if you say destination Gnoss Field overflying Oakland, San Carlos, San Francisco, they've got a clue. And you've just helped them. And you'll hear that on the recorded audio. There are many, many variations possible. So if indeed there are TFRs for Oakland A's or San Francisco Giants, then there are places you can go down as far as San Jose. And you can cross midfield San Jose at 2,500 feet, and then come up 101 past Moffett Field, Palo Alto, San Carlos, San Francisco. Essentially, major highways define the Bay Tour, and you can make a turn over Oakland, you can make a turn over Hayward and go to Palo Alto, you can keep going all the way down to San Jose from here. If you originate, you can originate at any of the airports in there and request a Bay Tour and figure out what clockwise direction you want to go. And you don't have to land. In fact, the Bay Tour is the easiest way for me to get from San Carlos or Palo Alto through the Class Bravo to get here. I don't have to do it IFR if the weather's okay, and I don't have to go over the ocean, which I'm not a big fan of. It's cold out there. So I do a Bay Tour just to get here. They like it, I like it, and it works. So I've probably done about 25 Bay Tours, some with passengers, some just trying to get somewhere. Many, many variations. So plan. One of my problems, I've been trying to record the audio for a Bay Tour for about 6 weeks, and it rained. And then we had problems. May gray, June gloom was the phrase in San Diego that they would refer to the beaches. And you'd see all these folks in t-shirts and shorts running into the ocean where it was 52 degrees, having a blast. They're all tourists from the Midwest. But May gray, June gloom means that you've got low overcast marine layer coming in. Clouds below 2,500, even few and scattered, may block San Francisco clearances for transitions west and south of 101 around San Francisco. They really don't like having too much weather to deal with for these sightseeing flights. And by the way, the haze that comes with that kind of moisture really spoils the pictures. TFRs I already mentioned. Be aware of Fleet Week. Other things that might cause TFRs, check NOTAMs, check the maps for the red circles. Congestion. So you might get delayed, if not refused, because there's too many people flying a Bay Tour at the same time around San Francisco typically. San Carlos almost kicked me out on a real bay tour that I was doing. And so I just had to go farther south out of their airspace. They have a Class Delta ring. And so I just went a little farther south and a little farther west and left them alone, because they had like 6 planes in the pattern. Oh, I get it. I'm not going to hassle them. They're busy enough with all the people doing pattern work. San Francisco heavies departing to Asia. People will talk about the times when there is an airport push. And so if you ever get to see the recording of planes leaving or planes in the air for the last 24 hours, look for the time around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, leaving San Francisco. And it's like a pea shooter sending big airplanes northwest to Asia. You would not want to do a bay tour then because of the traffic conflicts. As you're going around 101, these heavies weighing 500,000 to 1 million pounds with fuel are going to climb like really not well. And you're going to conflict. And so that might be a reason for them to say no. They don't say come back at 3 o'clock when there's nobody going to Asia, but you might figure that out. Low clouds. I found this weather site, fog.today. If you fly in the Bay Area, this was the end of May. No, it was the first day, June 2nd. You see the effect of the fog layer coming in and aiming for Berkeley. I don't know why it goes for Berkeley, but it seems to be, it likes putting the fog through the Golden Gate to Berkeley and filling the Bay Area. So this was, I decided this was too low. There were few clouds at 800 feet, few clouds at 1,200 feet. I was not going to get a clearance. I was not going to go. And then Monday was the very first day I got a completely clear view of this satellite image of the low clouds. And I flew it. So who will you talk to? All right, so some people are worried about talking to air traffic control people. If you fly a bay tour, you will talk to lots of people. In the flight that I took, I talked here to the Gnoss Field CTAF to be able to get out, Oakland Center to get flight following, NorCal approach 120.9 in order to get going southbound, Oakland Tower East. Oh, by the way, there are 2 towers you have to talk to when doing an Oakland transition. Normally, when you're just coming in to do landings at Oakland, you talk to the East Tower that handles runways 28 right, 28 left. But since you're going across the airport, you have to then talk to Oakland West, which is 127.2. Then they transition you over the bay, and you have to call up San Carlos. The first time I did this, I really botched it, and that was a long time ago. And so I've learned to, and in fact, the controller this time said something which was much more helpful, state intention. Call San Carlos and state intentions. You'll talk to San Carlos Tower, and then you'll talk to San Francisco Tower. Or more importantly, you will listen to San Francisco Tower. And you'll see why in a moment. And then you'll leave the surface to 10,000 foot sector, and they will kick you out, and they'll say, please call NorCal 135.1, which is our friend. That's the Golden Gate Bridge, Alcatraz, Sausalito, all of those near North Bay areas are in the sector for 135.1. And it's just radio changes. I mean, there are lots of them, and they're handling busy airports like San Carlos, and certainly San Francisco. But it's all part of the process. It's all part of the pace. Don't get sucked into the speed, but just be aware that there's a cadence. You're going to call them up. You're going to tell them what you're doing. You're going to get some instructions. You're going to get kicked out and handed off to the next guy. So what will you say as an example? Jordan came and gave a talk on ATC, and he kind of recommended that you not ask Oakland Center for flight following if you're going down into the Bay Area. And that's just because they don't have much time between taking off from, where are we? Gnoss Field. Taking off from Gnoss Field and getting handed off to NorCal across the bay. Personally, I don't like the yahoos that fly down the Petaluma River at 1,500, 2,000 feet without help. So my recommendation is you take off, you head a little bit north, and you call Oakland Center, Cirrus 150 Sierra Alpha, 8 miles west of Skaggs Island, VOR at 1,500 feet, request flight following Bay Tour, destination Gnoss Field. And again, I'm emphasizing, tell them where you're going to stop, so that they have a strip that says, so he's going to do something weird, and then he's coming back into my sector at Gnoss Field. When you get to NorCal approach, they know about the Bay Tour. Oakland Center doesn't. They can't give you a clearance. So you have to wait to the sector that owns the airspace. NorCal approach, Cirrus 150 Sierra Alpha. It feels so much easier to say this to you than it did on the radio. You'll hear. And Tim heard it all yesterday, so he's laughing about don't I sound professional, Tim? Hey. NorCal approach, Cirrus 150 Sierra Alpha, 2,500, request Bay Tour, destination Gnoss Field, overflying Oakland, San Carlos, San Francisco. Just write it out and just find a way to be sort of concise, respecting the airtime in the radio frequency. And then they'll say something back. It may not be what you expect. So be flexible and figure out what you're going to do. And it might be you think of plan A, plan B, and plan C is I make a left turn and go to Concord because they won't let me do what I want to do. So be aware that there's a need for some alternatives whenever you get this reply back. So an actual Bay Tour. So like I said, Monday I went out and I recorded it. Thanks, Robert, for your GoPros, because I got nice audio and video. I'm not going to show the video. I'm going to show you selected images. And we're going to play this off my computer, so I need to check the volume.
NorCal approach, 150 Sierra Alpha on the Bay Tour, climbing to 2,500.
November 150 Sierra Alpha, NorCal approach, resume navigation at appropriate VFR altitude, field and altimeter 29er, 89er.
29er, 89er, 150 Sierra Alpha.
So I can already hear in that a little level of stress that I'm not sure. I'm so comfortable right now. But when I was flying, I was a little more stressed out than I admitted until I heard this afterwards. And we're approaching, this is the Richmond area, San Pablo Bay, and we're just crossing the shoreline, letting them know we're on our way. But listen, as I get to Berkeley.
And November 0 Sierra Alpha, you said you wanted to do a Bay Tour. Where'd you want to go?
0 Sierra Alpha requesting crossing Oakland to San Carlos and then San Francisco back to Gnoss Field.
So.
And November 0 Sierra Alpha, roger, proceed over the Coliseum 2,500 for your transition.
2,500 for the transition, 0 Sierra Alpha.
So it's interesting that she needed to be told again what I was doing, which is okay, I'll just repeat it again. But then she came back with instructions. And somewhere in the haze was the red roof of the Oakland Oracle Arena. And next to it is the baseball diamond, which I have trouble seeing from afar. The red roof I can see from afar, but the Oakland Coliseum is the baseball diamond, and that's what they want you to aim for.
Number 150 Sierra Alpha, contact Oakland Tower 118.3.
Oakland Tower 118.3, thanks.
So I get close enough to the Coliseum. I'm in Oakland airspace, or about to, and she gives me the handoff. I'm now talking to Oakland
November
East.
150 Sierra Alpha, Oakland Tower. I got a little bit of the Bay Tour request from NorCal. Which way did you want to head?
150 Sierra Alpha requesting numbers 30, then to San Carlos, San Francisco.
So there's another example.
Number 150 Sierra Alpha, roger. So direct for the Oakland Coliseum and then over runway 30 numbers. Descend and maintain VFR 2000. The Oakland altimeter is 29er, 89er.
29er, 89er, cross the Coliseum, numbers 30, descend to 2000. 150 Sierra Alpha.
So there was the instruction to perform the transition. I'm too high at 2,500, I've got to descend to 2,000. I've got to aim for the numbers. Whichever way I'm getting there, I need to aim for the numbers. and then, pardon me, and then what you won't hear is the East Tower hands me off to the West Tower. which was a little busy with some Southwest arrivals and departures, and you just got to go with the flow. So you're not too surprised that everybody's asking for all the details about what I'm going to do on the Bay Tour.
Sirius Alpha, advise San Carlos of your intentions. Radar service is terminated. Keep your beacon code and contact San Carlos Tower. Have a good day.
Contact San Carlos. Thanks for the help. 150 Sierra Alpha.
Now, I'm aimed for the midspan of the bridge, and once upon a time I made the mistake of aiming for the midpoint of the high span. If you've ever driven over the bridge at the high span and noticed an airplane right there, I did too, except I was flying and getting scolded. Midspan is actually midway between the flat part, start and end, and you're about 8 miles from San Carlos. You're not in their airspace.
San Carlos Tower, Cirrus 150 Sierra Alpha, midspan the bridge, requesting transition, Bay Tour, San Carlos, San Francisco, back.
Cirrus for 150 Sierra Alpha, San Carlos Tower, suggest a heading of 200, stay above 1,200 and below 1,400, transition class Delta, altimeter 2988.
2988, between 12,000 and 150 Sierra Alpha, below 14,000, above 12,000, H.
Sierra 0 Sierra Alpha, you're close, above 1,200 and below 1,400.
There we go. Above 1,200, below 1,400, and you'll provide a clearance closer in?
Negative, San Francisco will do that, but I'm giving you clearance through my Delta. So transition to Delta, and I'll change you at the appropriate time. Just fly. So just heading a 200 for Cirrus 150 Sierra Alpha.
150 Sierra Alpha on heading 200.
Tim, when he heard it, was really hoping I was going to keep that in. I mean, I wrote it down as 1200, and I thought of it as 1,200, and I heard it from them as 1,200, and my brain was not able to say 1,200, 1,400. It's a fumble. And you could sense the little bit of humor is not too far a word from the San Carlos guy, who clearly had enough time to be able to help me. I mean, that whole sequence is about a minute long. And, but it's the kind of thing you end up with when you're stressed and I'm rusty. So I'm getting into the cadence, and I'm doing much better in this talk, having rehearsed it several times, than I was when I flew it on Monday. So now let me start to shift over to my simulator.
00 Sierra Alpha, suggest a heading now of 230.
230, 150 Sierra Alpha.
So I'm going to pretend you can hear that. Okay, good. I'm going to pretend I know how to fly the simulator, and I positioned the airplane so that at that instruction 230, I'm headed to the Diamond Waterway, which is right here, and San Carlos Airport. It's on autopilot, so I should be able to just get it to go. And eventually, I'll get another instruction as I get closer to Highway 101. Oh. Yeah, please. You can't see what I see. All right, so the Diamond Waterway just under the wing, San Carlos right there. And then I got another instruction, which is the handoff to San Francisco Tower. Yoo-hoo.
Cirrus 0 Sierra Alpha, turn right and follow Highway 101.
Follow 101, 150 Sierra Alpha.
Cirrus 0 Sierra Alpha, keep Highway 101 off your right side at all times. Remain outside Bravo airspace. Contact San Francisco Tower 120.5. Safe flight.
So I've changed the autopilot to go in the direction north towards San Francisco. This is Highway 101, simulated in X-plane. And as the plane levels out, you'll start to see San Francisco Airport right there. I'm a little bit too far this time. I'll get it back a little bit. That'll do it. So down here on my, well, I forgot to tell you, there's a ring here which is the surface to 10,000 feet that is the problem with it's the computer. Okay. Anyway, so there's a ring there. Thou shalt not enter unless you hear the magic words cleared into Class Bravo. And you'd better do that before you cross that ring. If you can't talk to the San Francisco Tower, you better be prepared to turn left, stay away, and essentially make that your approach. So, rock and roll here.
Sun Country 698, land.
So now you're hearing San Francisco.
On right, takeoff. On right, clear for takeoff, area 698. Southwest 384, wind 290 at 19, and 1 left, clear takeoff.
Takeoff 1 left, Southwest 384.
San Francisco Tower 150 Sierra Alpha off Bay Tour and requesting transition.
Sirius 150 Sierra Alpha, San Francisco Tower, ident cleared in the Bravo airspace, maintain VFR at or below 2000, remain south and west of the Bayshore Freeway, San Francisco altimeter is 2988.
2988 ident and at or below 1500. 150 Sierra Alpha.
Skywest 5531, hold short 928 left.
Hold short 28 left, Skywest 5531.
Southwest 2076, running 1 right, line up.
So you can see that the tower is back to doing his regular stuff for this itinerant Bay Tour guy. I got my phrase in there. He gave me the clearance really quite quickly, so I'm good to go. And I mentioned I'm going to keep it at 1500, which he noticed.
Sirius 0 Sierra Alpha, to maintain VFR at or below 2000, and your radar contact 6 miles east-southeast San Francisco Airport, altitude indicates 1,200.
All right, at or below 2000, 150 Sierra Alpha.
So it turns out over here, there are a bunch of hills that'll come into play in the next instruction, and he is allowing me to go higher to 2,000 feet. I'm happy being at 1,500 feet. You know, when I've taken people in the plane and they see all the airplanes landing at San Francisco or taking off at the runway 1, it's a hoot, and it's a lot of fun to see people doing that. So we're going to continue, and we're going to get the next instruction.
Sirius 0 Sierra Alpha, beam to control tower, make left 360, still advised.
Left 360 at the control tower, 150 Sierra Alpha.
Skywest 5248, turn left at Echo, contact ground.
Echo ground, test 5248.
So I've had left 360s once before where there was traffic departing on runway 28 and they didn't want us to be in the position of conflicting with that departing traffic, because typically 101, those planes are at about the same altitude as we're flying on the Bay Tour. So, how am I going to do a left 360? I'm going pretty fast. I don't think I want to do as wide 360 as I would, and so I'm starting to pull the power back and slow down in case I have to do, at the control tower, do a left 360. And oh, by the way, these hills are about 1,200 feet, and I think I'd better be a little higher if I have to do a 360. So my brain is working to try and figure out how this is all going to fit.
American 2683, traffic holding on the ones, when 290 at 17, runway 28 left, clear takeoff.
Clear to takeoff 28 left, American 2683.
Sirius 0 Sierra Alpha, reported departing Airbus on runway 28 left in sight.
Traffic in sight on the runway, 150 Sierra Alpha.
0 Sierra Alpha, maintain visual separation with Airbus, caution make turbulence.
Maintain visual separation, we'll go 150 Sierra Alpha.
0 Sierra Alpha, continue via the 101 freeway, and you can continue with your transition, just pass behind that traffic.
No 360s. So it turns out I was looking for the departing traffic. I'd heard them talk about American 2863, and he was sitting ready to enter the runway, line up and wait. And so I was watching him at this point in the airport. And so I was slowing down for the left 360, but then I got a clearance I didn't need to. I just had to continue on 101 around the airport until I heard this.
Midfield, if you'd like, then rejoin it northwest of the airport.
Cross midfield, rejoin west of the airport, Wilco.
So now I'm going to tell the autopilot to send the airplane right over San Francisco. And I think in retrospect it was because there were no planes taking off runway 1. And he was happy to have me go. Landing airplanes are no problem. And that's kind of cool because, you know, I got a nice view of the terminal, which is simulated scenery in the X-plane. And I'm flying right over the middle of the airport, and away we go. So that was fun, but you're not done yet.
Today, 00 Alpha, leaving the Bravo airspace in 3 miles. Contact NorCal on 135.1.
135.1, thanks for help. 1500 Alpha.
So there's a little bit of challenge. I'm not as far as I would be when he said that, but Bruno Boughton has some terrain if you're going along 101, and you're going to have to navigate that terrain. 1,500 feet, you'll clear the terrain, but you have lateral issues, be careful. So he's given me a clearance to talk to NorCal 135.1, which is the departure frequency for both San Francisco and Oakland. And so this is the Oakland airport over here. And now...
1400 NorCal departure, radar contact, maintain 2000 for traffic.
2000, Southwest 1400.
000 Alpha, maintain VFR at or below 1,500 for now. Traffic south of Oakland, they're westbound, currently restricted to 2,000 feet and 737.
150 Sierra Alpha, 1,500.
So here's another traffic conflict, although I was a little surprised. I intended to climb up over the city. Noise issues, you know, scaring people in the high rises, seeing airplanes coming right at them. So I was climbing, and I'm being told to stay at 1,500 feet because there's a Southwest jet taking off out of Oakland that's restricted to 2,000 feet for some reason. I don't know why. But the opportunity is to just stay with the system, figure out how all of these things play together, and deal with the instructions as you're given to them. So that concludes.
So I flew it on Monday. I put it together, clips, all the good, bad, and the ugly. And then as part of the debrief, I was a little surprised listening to myself as to how much stress I indicated. I was rusty, probably a lot like people that do it for the first time. So truth in advertising, you can screw up just like I did and not feel bad. Otherwise, you could be up here talking about it too. Oh, I changed slides. Debrief. So Scanlon Aviation flight training is part of Scanlon Aviation, the maintenance folks, the air charter folks. And as Ken indicated, they're the ones that give us the space. And I've started working with them because I'm passionate about helping pilots fly safer, using the simulator for training, for recurrency, and to essentially to work on procedures. So Pat is here, Pat's there. Robert Tarleton is here. Talbot is flying the Cessna. Rob, you here? Rob's here, he's coming on board as another instructor, and I get to work in the dark room with the simulator. If you're interested, please check out ScanlonAviation.com. And Pat, you want to give people an invitation?
First of all, thanks for everyone being here. It's fantastic seeing all the new faces and the young people that are here. I just love it. We get more and more youth here all the time. Rick, thank you very much for a good job, good presentation. Those who have been around, we've had the simulator for some time. Those of you who know me, we've had a real shortage of instructors and staff. This unit has languished for probably 4 years. This unit is courtesy of my good friend sitting over here, Jim Whittington. And
thanks, Jim.
We finally have capacity to start implementing a tool that Jim has afforded us to have, okay? And it's due to Rick's efforts here. He's got scenarios built into it. Actually went through, first thing is get all the new updates, get the equipment working the way it should. But we finally have a viable tool for private pilots to get a little bit of hood time outside the plane and instrument pilots to get some training And with the new regs, as we mentioned earlier, pilots can use the equipment. What we'll do is get everyone that might want to use it, we'll get some training on how to use the equipment from Rick here. And we're trying to make it available, make this a viable tool that it really is. Again, thanks to Jim. He's been patiently waiting for us to get it busy for a long time. So, thanks.
Now, I know there was at least one question posed. Any questions? Quest?
What was your average speed on the Bay Tour, and can you give us a scenario on how many times you changed altitude and by how much?
Oh, okay. Speed was about 120, and that was a compromise between, I didn't know how much recording time I could get on the GoPro, and I didn't have any passengers, and I knew all the sites, so it was just get the recordings done. I've flown it at 100, and I've had curious passengers. Altitudes, I took off out of here, climbed to 2,500, went into the Coliseum because I knew that was where they would want me. Descended to 2,000 over the numbers, descended to 1,400, 1,300 actually, over the San Mateo Bridge, crossed San Carlos at 1,300, climbed up to 1,500, could have gone to 2,000, although I love watching and racing the airplanes landing, because if you get to 140, you're as fast as most of the airplanes landing at San Francisco. And then once I was clear of that, I went up to 3,000 and just came home. That's your question? Dan?
For newcomers, and I've noticed this once, do you have any suggestions on how to find the stadium? They just say fly over the stadium.
No, they say the Coliseum. Right, because if they said the stadium, it might be Berkeley. So he was asking, is there any way for newbies? That's what the charts are for. It's actually marked on the chart as the Coliseum. That's what Google Earth is good for, or the satellite view of Google Maps, is to look for it. What are those that's also in the back of Max's chart, the laminated guide. He has some of these Right. So he's pointing out that there's actually a VP GPS waypoint for the Mormon Temple. If you are transiting beyond, outside of, and not into the Oakland Class Delta, Class Charlie, the Mormon Temple keeps you on the east side of 580. The Coliseum is for us good guys that are flying the Bay Tour, because that gets us essentially on the downwind, the 45 to the downwind, to get to Oakland, the East Tower, then cross it. You bring up a good point. How do you find out all of these various waypoints, locations? Max's guide is one solution to that. The VP waypoint, the visual points, GPS waypoints is another. Listening to live ATC and then figuring out what did they mean by the cement plant. And is it a VP waypoint? I actually don't remember whether it is or isn't, but that's the time when you talk to some local knowledgeable expert, an instructor or somebody who's done it a lot, and they will tell you the cement plant at San Carlos is where you turn base. So, other questions? Yes? All right, so during my talk, right? You checked it during my, oh, she already had it. Anyway, the ForeFlight document feature is available on the tablet version, not on the iPhone version, oh, by the way. And when you look at the FAA catalog, all the charts and supplements are in there. The flyway chart is a supplement. Even though ForeFlight uses the terminal area chart, it doesn't flip it over for you. You have to go get it out of that catalog under FAA and then download it so that you can use it on your in ForeFlight. Quest at the back. Oh, well, if I'm going somewhere like over Sausalito and into the west side of San Francisco from here, I might not get Oakland Center clearance in order to just be able to get, because that sector's farther out. the handoffs are often farther out for 135.1. This time, Oakland Center, 8 miles west of Skaggs, is an interesting difference between Gnoss Field. Because if you say you're off Gnoss Field, it's like, where are you off Gnoss Field? And so if you take off Gnoss Field and go like 1 mile, turn crosswind, you're 8 or 9 miles from Skaggs VOR. And that's something which is easy it seems easy for the controller to figure out where you are and what to do. My preference is I want the help. And over the San Pablo Bay, people going into Napa or coming out of Napa, people going into Oakland, I just want the help. So I'm prudent about it. Like you were just saying, over Sausalito, you can probably get to 135.1 and get hooked up with them sooner than you can with 120.9. And I don't know, do you know where there's a sector map that would tell me what NorCal sectors are?
I was thinking more of the culture that you said at the stop, where if you were flying east from somewhere like Palo Alto, and you were in that space underneath the Bravo, that's 4,000 feet, is that sort of like the Skaggs are, and then that situation, would they be like two very different places?
Aha. So the question about getting flight following in the South Bay area, that's a little bit out of my territory. I get flight following sometimes from the tower because there are a lot of yahoos flying in Palo Alto. And I've come in number 3 on the downwind while there's 4 people on the other downwind. It's like 7 airplanes. What are they doing? There's good Chinese food near there, but these people are all flying in the downwind. It's crazy. So that's a case where I don't even try. I just get flight following from the tower, and then I'm talking to whichever sector I'm going. Going east over Hayward is a crapshoot. So you might end up talking to Class Charlie San Jose. You might end up talking to the NorCal sector. Hayward, probably not talking to Hayward, but it's a challenge. So that's a situation where I'd beg forgiveness. I'd look in the chart, get a sector NorCal clearance frequency, dial it up, and say, I'd like flight following, and see what happens. Yes?
Not exactly a Bay Tour question, but what's your experience been with the published VFR transitions with Bravo?
Ha! So on the flyway chart, there's a whole bunch of thick, wide arrows. He's asking about getting the flyway transitions from the ATC. I have never used them since August when they came out. But I have found that I get clearances which follow them. So NorCal has always been impressive to me as to how accommodating they are for those flyways. Some of those flyways are intended for VFR pilots who do not talk to ATC. You with me? Yeah. Okay, let me go. All right, he's talking about something in my chart. Let me get to it because I can point to it. There we are. So there are these blue areas where they're expecting traffic to be like these transitions, bay tours, and so on. But there's also these magenta arrows. And this is the coastal transition. I've forgotten what the name of this one is. And this is the Bayshore transition. I've not tried to ask for them by name, but you might have noticed that the tower gave me the Bayshore transition, west and south of 101 around the airport. Oh, by the way, if I said unable to the 360s, where do you think they would send me? I'm already in Class Bravo. Where would they send me? They'd probably say, fly heading 270 out to the coast, and you can ditch there for all he cares. Or then you turn up and you go along the ocean beach.
I recommend using those flyways if you're transiting past Bravo. You just say, I'd like to use the base tour, VFR route, specifically VFR route. They set your altitude
Yep.
I'm not talking, I haven't done the east side.
Yep. Okay, so other questions? Yes?
You mentioned about having that letter for the instrument currency, the FAA letter, and I'm not sure, it's kind of hidden in the advisory circular, but those letters are only good for 5 years. They have to be reissued every 5 years. So you've got to watch out when you're logging time versus the letter you have with the rank check on the data.
So he's talking about the expiry that exists for this letter. And indeed, Pat was referring to getting things current. One of the things that needed to become current was an update to this letter. And so we have an updated letter that expires, it doesn't say it on this excerpt, but it does expire in 5 years. Oh, you want? The dynamics of simulating the physics of a parachute are not well done by S-plane. But you end up, and typically you walk away. Any other questions? Yes, Frank? So he's asking about advanced planning for that. I did not file. I did not file. I did not call the tower. I simply did it in the sequence of those recordings. That was, exactly all the preparation they had for me to do what I wanted to do. Question?
Was that a traditional bay tour that you did, or is it different versions of it?
What's traditional bay tour, he says. No, that's, Oakland transition is on the flyways. So they do that, they've been doing that for as long as I've been flying in the Bay Area. As I said in one of my charts, there are lots of variations. You can go down from here all the way to San Jose. You could start at Reed Hillview, come up to the Bay Bridge, go around the toll plaza and go back down 880. So there's just an immense number of variations depending on where you start, you end. And as they were mentioning, a transition just to get somewhere, you can fly a bay tour as part of your VFR en route flying. Just a little lower and a little more controlled. Hearing none. Oh, another one.
I have a question for Glenn. If we've already done or attended one of these bay tours specifically for a seminar, do we still get credit for it?
So I'll amplify Glenn's question. Marielle was asking whether or not you've been to one of these before, you get credits before. You can get credit for today because you came today. Furthermore, we're going to work with Glenn to make it an aeronautical decision-making credit, not just an elective credit. And that's important because of the requirements in the WINGS program that you have an aeronautical decision-making credit every time you apply for the basic fees. Oh.
When you said you were going to overfly San Carlos, they didn't interpret that as you remain above the class delta?
Very good question. So the question was, when I said I was intending to overfly San Carlos, does that mean above the class delta? Whoops. Class delta is the bottom of class Bravo. There is no overfly without a class Bravo clearance. So I meant the airport as opposed to the airspace. Good question though. Don't assume you can break the rules just because I do it everywhere else. I fly over the airport above the airspace. You do that at Santa Rosa, you can't do that at San Carlos. Question? So it turns out there's a mixture to the question. You know, you're not really putting in a flight plan. The strips are getting handed off tower to tower. What's good about it, Robert, is the towers to tower, they've worked out how to do that. So Oakland West was the tower that told me to dive, to descend to 1400, cross mid-span, call up tower at San Carlos and state your intentions. You're still way outside their airspace. If you wait and don't talk to them, you're a surprise. Oakland Tower is hinting you'd better give them some heads up. And then they figure out what they need in order to be able to execute the Bay Tour plan that I've just requested. And bless them, you know, down in the Los Angeles area, there's a whole bunch of pre-planned terminal en route IFR clearances. Here's a little factoid. In this LA San Diego airspace, 100-mile radius, there are 46 airports with instrument procedures. Could you imagine the chaos if somebody just got their instrument rating and they wanted to do the most fancy IFR route? No, 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 no. They have 2,448. Did you catch that? They have pre-programmed, if you want to go from here, Burbank, to there, Gillespie Field in San Diego, you will fly this route. And many of them are just simply the Santa Monica Tower, talks to LA Tower, talks to Hawthorne Tower, talks to Torrance Tower, and you don't ever talk to SoCal Approach. Not so organized up here, but the same kind of cooperation and coordination seems to happen. Good question. Thanks, Robert. Oh, you're lovely. Thank you.